shelters that are open, that are being open or have been open in some counties that are in the path of the storm. Our rules in Florida are that all counties have to have at least one pet-friendly shelter. It's important that we do that. People that will, and there's not a lot of evacuation, people under evacuation orders. I know there's some of the local zones that have been either voluntary and maybe some mandatory, but we do have those shelters, or local communities have those shelters. But make sure you're taking care of your pets. Make sure they have everything they need during this storm. We're going to see flooding in various parts of the state potentially. I mean, you look at that track, and right now they have it kind of going into Big Bend, maybe a little bit east of Tallahassee, and then going across the state, mostly southern Georgia, North Florida. But this is a big storm. I mean, you're going to have rain that's going to be far beyond the center of the storm. So just prepare for that. Just because you're not in the eye of the storm does not mean you are not going to have major impacts from the storm. So flood water is dangerous. Hide from the wind, but run from the water is what we tell people. It's not safe to drive in flooded roadways. There's hidden dangers. There's downed electrical lines. If the storm passes and your streets are flooded, be careful walking in that. This is potentially hazardous to be able to do. Most deaths from flooding are from individuals who are driving in flooded waters. It only takes 1 foot of moving water to move a vehicle. So please stay off the road if a flood watch or warning is issued in your area. And based on the amount of water that we're expecting, there are going to be floods that are going to happen in different parts of the state. If you have any items outside your home, you need to bring them inside now. We've got a lot of athletic equipment. We got baseballs and bats and gloves and stuff. And our front porch, it's all inside now. We've got nothing out there. And I would encourage other folks to follow suit with that. Anything you can pick up, put it up before it becomes debris that harms your home in the event of storm force winds. Emergency alerts save lives, so please have multiple ways to receive those alerts and act immediately when you receive them. Your local emergency management officials will have the best information that's relevant to your area, whether that's what's going to happen with schools, whether that's what's going to happen with any evacuation, either recommendations or evacuation orders. So please listen to your local officials, heed that guidance, and make sure you're doing what you need to do to prepare and to protect yourself and your families. You can find county emergency management information at floridadisaster.org/counties, floridadisaster.org/counties. This is not something that is unusual for Florida. We know during hurricane season that we have a tropical weather. We have prepared, even when this thing wasn't even organized. We marshaled resources that have been working very hard. And I want to thank Kevin and his team, Jared, everybody who's been, they've been working round the clock over the last few days to prepare for this. So just take it seriously. Understand that this is going to be an event that has significant impacts across the state, and stay safe. Listen to your local officials. And as soon as the storm passes, we'll have folks that are in there offering assistance as needed. So I'm going to turn it over now to Kevin Guthrie and then Jared Perdue.
Thank you, Governor. Again, as always, Governor, thank you so much for your steadfast leadership and swift action on this. Again, it's very easy for us to do our job here at the division when the governor gives us, 48 to 72 hours to get ready. We were able to fully deploy the Florida National Guard and have them in place on scene before the storm makes landfall. And that's very, very crucial to doing that. So again, thank you, Governor, for your leadership on that. I'd like to start by sharing what I typically emphasize about tropical systems. Each tropical system brings unique circumstances, and you can't respond the exact same way to each and every one of them. This is certainly true with this particular storm. 2 days ago, this was just going to be a rain event. Now we have a wind and a rain event, but the winds are going to subside pretty quickly once it makes landfall, and then we're going to be into a catastrophic rain situation where we have situations in Florida that will receive 15, maybe as high as 20 inches of rain. That being said, please rest assured that the men and women of the State Emergency Response Team are the best of the best. They have been diligently working since last week and through the weekend to ensure that the state is ready to respond to your needs. The state emergency response team has logistical staging areas set up in Duval, Jackson, and Marion counties to ensure we can get requested resources to communities quickly and as soon as it's safe to do so. As the governor said, Tropical Storm Debby is set to become a hurricane by tonight before it reaches the Florida Big Bend coast. I was talking to our meteorologist this morning, and again, there is a 1 in 3 chance that this may have a rapid intensification. So I want people to make sure they're paying attention to the updates. Those updates come from the National Weather Service at 11, 2, 5, and 8 around the clock, 24 hours a day. So please make sure you're tuning into your local meteorologist, your local National Weather Service station, the National Hurricane Center, your local emergency manager, and or the state emergency response team. Please I'd like to remind residents to not focus on one forecast cone. The hazards in this situation are going to be tornadoes, strong wind gusts, inland flooding, and possible impacts well outside of the center of the storm. We had our first impact last night at around 9 p.m., and that was a tornado warning for the areas of northern Broward and southern Palm Beach. So please, again, we're starting to see those. Make sure you're aware of them. As we said, this system could produce up to 18 inches of rain across portions of northern Florida through Friday morning. Please remember that storm surge, tropical storm, and hurricane warnings mean that these impacts are likely expected in the next 36 hours, and we already have those storm watches and warnings up. Storm surge can cause water levels to rise very quickly and flood large areas, sometimes in just minutes. And you could be left with no time to take action. If you haven't already evacuated as instructed, the time to do that is now. As the governor indicated, we do have some counties that have voluntary and mandatory evacuation orders, but you can find out those evacuation orders from your local emergency management agency. Also, as the governor said, it is never safe to be in floodwaters, as there can be many, many hidden hazards, such as the live electrical wires, displaced wild animals, chemicals, and hazardous waste. And simply put, floodwaters are unhealthy and unsafe to be in, so do not walk or drive through them. You should be now making your final preparations. As the governor has also said, this is the first time that we have deployed flood control devices around substations. This has been a best practice for hospitals inside of Hurricane Ian and Idalia, and now we're taking that to substations and wastewater treatment plants, water treatment plants. If you are a municipality or a county, an electrical entity, we still have some time to put that out. We have over 10 miles of the flood control devices. Contact your local emergency management agency, make that request of the state of Florida now. Now is the time so that we can get that into your community and help protect that infrastructure. To Floridians that are looking for resources on preparing and other state updates, please follow us at floridadisaster.org/updates. You can also follow us on X and Instagram at FLSERT and on Facebook at FDEM. And Governor, as always, thank you for your continued leadership and support.
Garrett.
All right, thank you, Governor, for your steadfast leadership, and thank you, Kevin, for your leadership at the Division of Emergency Management. We've been having interagency coordination since early this week. At the Florida Department of Transportation, we started coordination calls and staging and moving and mobilizing resources as early as Monday of this week. We take these storms very seriously. We want to be prepared to respond at a moment's notice. We've already begun securing all of our construction projects throughout the state, especially in the vicinity of the impact area, all of our coastal bridge projects, and even projects along state routes and interstate system to help people move around. We secure those projects and shut those projects down so people can move around freely. We've been preparing our facilities, making sure travel lanes and shoulders are clear from debris and ready to handle evacuations if they're ordered. We've already extended our Road Ranger Service Patrol to 24/7 operation to facilitate people safely moving around and getting where they need to go. So we're ready to facilitate evacuations. We've been staging crews and equipment these last few days, moving them to be prepared to go in at a moment's notice into the impact area. As you heard the governor mention, we have over 120 cut and toss crews on standby and ready to go. We have 150 other crews ready to support the emergency response efforts with damage assessment, flooding, traffic signals, etc. These resources are prepped and staged strategically so that we can respond quickly. We have over 1,200 generators that we've already mobilized, over 230 pieces of heavy equipment, and 70 pumps to help with flooding, especially when that localized flooding starts occurring. We have drone teams, we have Starlink devices, we have connectivity, and we're ready to go. We're also preparing our bridges. We're watching them very closely when it comes to bridges. There's a lot of things to remember. One is, if you see water overtopping the road, do not drive through it. It is very dangerous. Do not drive through water overtopping the road. We have over 120 bridge inspectors ready to go as soon as the storm passes through. We have several streams, creeks, tributaries, and rivers in the state of Florida. It's one of the things we're known for. Anytime there's a major rain event, that water can rise quickly. We're going to be watching it very closely. And again, if you see water overtopping the road, do not drive through it. When it comes to wind, we work very closely with Florida Highway Patrol and local law enforcement. As soon as the wind reaches sustained 40 miles per hour, law enforcement officers will begin to close those bridges to traffic. So please keep that in mind as you're looking at evacuation orders, as you're preparing to move around. Once the winds reach 40 miles per hour sustained, those bridges will start to be closed by law enforcement officers. We've been in very close coordination with our airports, our seaports, our transit agencies. They're all prepped and ready to implement their emergency response plans. The seaports on the West Coast, Seaport Manatee, St. Pete, and Port Tampa Bay have all closed their waterside operations to shipping, but the fuel terminals on the land side are fully operational and serving those who need fuel. So we're staged, we're ready to go. Remember, for traffic information, Florida511.com is the place to go. All of our closures, all of the impacts to roadways will be published on Florida511.com. Again, Governor DeSantis, thank you for your leadership.
So we're going to have a major event. We are, of course, monitoring as it's in the Gulf. The further west that track moves, likely the more room it's going to have to intensify. So it's not out of the question that you could end up with a Category 2 storm. I mean, that is possible. It may not be the most likely, but it's certainly possible. So just prepare for that. And then once it does make landfall, it is going to be meandering for quite a bit over the next couple days. And it's going to just drop a lot of water on the state. And that's going to have impacts. And there are going to be hazards as a result of that. So just make the preparations now. Kevin mentioned on some of the things with the local governments, with what we're doing for the flood control, with the substations. You know, that could be the difference between keeping one of those substations operable versus having an outage and then having to scramble. So please utilize the resources that are available for you. We stand by ready to help. There's not a state in this country that if there's a request, Kevin's guys are fulfilling that faster than anywhere else in this country. And so they've been preparing for this. They're ready. So please, if you need it, ask for it, and they want to deliver it. Okay. Any questions?
I would ask, obviously this area looks like we're going to get the brunt of it. And as you know, we're already traumatized from the May 10 storms and tornadoes. And here we go again. I guess what's the best thing to tell the residents of this area in terms of how prepared you all are and what they can do specifically to make sure that they are individually or their families are prepared?
Well, we recognize when you're talking about an area like Tallahassee, there's a lot of trees. People like the trees, but hurricanes, that's a lot of opportunity to have debris flying around that can impact roadways. It can create dangers in and of itself, but it also makes it more likely that you're going to have power interruptions. And so what Kevin and the team have done, they've mobilized, working with the power companies, linemen. They may be bringing in some from out of state even if that's necessary. And I think what we want to avoid is, I think it was Hermine, what was that, 2016, where it was like people were without power for weeks. We have mutual aid. We've done it. When the local utilities accept it, this stuff can be put back online much quicker. So I would just say, whether it's Tallahassee or anywhere else, accept the mutual aid. Our view from the state is, when these storms happen, of course, you want to protect life and limb and property. If people are in need of rescue, of course, that's what the number one. But then get the power back on. And that's why they've mobilized all these resources. We've been doing this on all the different storms. They did not do that in Hermine, of course. So that's something that's really important. But you got to work together. We need to have a sense of urgency on this. I know Kevin and his team, they're going to be raring to go to be able to do. Even in some of the most severe storms, fortunately, the vast majority of people don't have their home destroyed, aren't hurt. But if you have all these people that are just waiting and waiting for weeks on end for power, that makes it harder to do everything else you need to do. So there's been a huge amount of emphasis on having these folks staged, be ready to go in. And, this is a storm. This is going to be a hurricane. It may even be Category 2. In Tallahassee, that's going to hit different than maybe some other parts of the state, just because the amount of trees that you have, and we're going to see some trees knocked down. I mean, that is going to happen. So that's going to impact the power. So they're going to do that. They're standing by. And I know we're working with local government here, as well as all the local governments throughout the region, to make sure that we're able to respond as quickly as possible for that. And Jared's guys are helpful on that as well. I mean, they're clearing the way for these utility linemen to be able to get in there and do it. So as soon as it's safe to do so, they're going to be out there working on power restoration. Do they have in substations around here, are they using the flood control devices in Tallahassee? Do you know?
General, I don't think we have.
We have one mission already complete.
One mission complete here. So, that could be the difference between having some power outages in a given area and maybe not, or mitigating. So I'm glad that they were doing that. These are things, you kind of learn, like, what's what. We saw some of the substations that were a little higher at Ian. They did fine. Some of the ones that were lower had some problems. And so Kevin and his team said, this is something that we want to look into. And so now we're in a position to be able to deploy those. But certainly any of these local governments, Kevin and his team are ready. We want to deploy more. We're totally willing to do that. So just make that request and we'll respond. We still have some time today to do it. So let's get it done.
If I had one follow-up to Kevin Guthrie, if you could tell us specifically what you're doing to get ready for after the storm to restore power, and then talk a little bit more about these flood control devices. What are they? What do they do? And so forth.
So to the first question on the power, as the governor's already indicated, we've got between 12 and 17,000 responders already identified inside of the state that are ready to go. So again, we are working very closely with the Florida Municipal Electric Association right here inside of Tallahassee, as well as Florida Co-op Electrical Association and the independent owned utilities. We have talked to every single one of those in the Big Bend area, representatives of of those individual companies. They are ready to go. They are in place. As the governor has said, we are looking at additional staff coming in from out of state. That will be a lead by the associations as well as the independent-owned utilities to bring those contractors in. But we do have, for instance, in the tornadoes we had just a couple of weeks ago, individuals from Dothan, Alabama, came in to help out the city of Tallahassee. So we're going to be able to pull those resources from Southeast United States very quickly. When the governor and I talked earlier this week, I mentioned we got 3 overarching objectives, and that is to be proactive. And we have certainly been proactive, more proactive than any other state at any time. We knew that we were going to have a flood event. State emergency management agencies and local emergency management agencies do not typically do well in the country on flooding events, but we wanted to set the standard for the United States on how to respond to a flood event. Therefore, the governor gave me the opportunity to get all of those resources in place to be proactive. So that leads into the second question of the flood control devices. So over the last 2 hurricanes, Hurricane Ian and Hurricane Idalia, the one thing that the governor has challenged me with for the 3 years that I have been in this position, and then the 3 years that I was the deputy director, is we've got to be able to build capability and capacity through disasters. And that is his quote, that is his leadership. We have done that. So over the last 2 disasters, we have been able to get 7 miles of this flood control system. We have another 3 miles on top of that. So we are over 10 linear miles. So this is tubing that we put water into. it inflates. We got items anywhere from 18 inches all the way to 42 inches, and then we can stack it up to about 8 feet high. So again, imagine building a flood protection barrier around the outside of a school, a hospital. We were very successful in saving some hospitals from flood damage inside of Hurricane Ian and Idalia. So now we're going that next step, that we have more of this flood control device. We're putting it around substations. For example, Clay Electric inside of Clay County has been purchased this quite some time ago. And I would argue, go and find a location in Clay County that has lost a substation due to flooding. It hasn't happened in years. That's because they're using this system. So that was the best practice we noticed in a smaller county. We were able now to duplicate that, what they're doing in Clay County for the first time underneath the governor's leadership, to actually put this around not only schools and hospitals, but the substations and wastewater control facilities and water control facilities. This is going to help us respond to and recover more quickly. It will also cut down the amount of damage that happens to that public infrastructure, which again was our third objective. We again, be proactive. We wanted no loss of life in this particular disaster. We wanted to protect critical infrastructure to prevent further cascading events. So we've been able to do that under the governor's leadership, and I certainly appreciate him letting us build that capability and capacity.
Yeah, and, you know, so on the track, the National Hurricane Center, they'll do on their 11 a.m. advisory, they will do an updated track, updated cone, do it again at 5 on their 5 o'clock advisory. And it's possible it could shift a little bit more west and get right over Tallahassee. It's possible it could even get a little bit west of Tallahassee, is what they're telling me. It's also possible it could shift a little bit back east to get more into the Big Bend. So watch that, but just understand none of that is necessarily foolproof. I mean, I remember 2020, Sally was supposed to hit Louisiana. Our state wasn't even in the cone. And then Sally comes and downtown Pensacola is underwater. It ended up hitting in Alabama much closer. And so there's going to be impacts beyond whatever that cone says. And so while whatever the eye of the storm crosses from a wind perspective is obviously something that's meaningful, when you have this much rain that's going to drop down, however that track goes, you could be 100 miles away from the eye of the storm. And in fact, you'll probably see, if it's in southern Georgia, you're still going to have impacts as it moves across the state in places like St. Augustine and other places that are there. So just watch the weather, watch the track, but understand that that's not necessarily foolproof in terms of where the impacts are limited to.
How are we feeling about the blood and the platelet supply in the state? Because I know that there's been issues with One Blood not being able to process and get that blood out to some hospitals, and they've been concerned about their supply lines going into this storm.
So Secretary Weta is here. I talked to Secretary Weta this morning, and he gave me a number of about 200 purchased platelets that are going to be coming into the state. He feels that they're in a really good location. They are able to start getting some of that inventory back up to where it needs to be for the state. But again, I believe probably this afternoon, Forrest, when we do an update this afternoon, we'll have much more information on that. But again, Secretary Weta told me that he's already purchased 200 packs of platelets to come into the state to help out.
So we'll do another update probably sometime in the afternoon, and maybe another one in the evening, depending on what the situation warrants. But we are going to face impacts in this state. You still have time to finalize your preparations. So I would urge all Floridians to do so. I'd urge all Floridians to be cognizant of the fact that we are going to have a hurricane hit the state, probably a Category 1, but it could be a little bit more powerful than that. But we are absolutely going to see a lot of rainfall. We are going to see a lot of saturation. We are going to see flooding events like that. That is going to happen. There's also going to be power outages. That will happen. And we've mobilized a lot of resources to get the power back on and help the local communities do that. And we're proud to play that role to help facilitate that. But there will be some level of interruption. So just prepare for that and make sure that you're making whatever arrangements that you need to be able to handle that. So we will be back with more later today, but I want to thank everybody here. They've been working very hard for the last days around the clock to be prepared. And this was when this was still a disorganized invest. We didn't we weren't sure whether it was going to necessarily lead to what it is now. But I think we always want to be prepared and hope it doesn't happen than just kind of wait. So these guys were very proactive. I think we're in a good spot.
Thank you all.